All right, today we're going to dive into just 5 short verses from the book of Acts. But trust me, what we're about to unpack is an absolute masterclass in leadership, in strategic thinking, and some really high-stakes decision-making. We're going to look at the Apostle Paul not just as a theologian, but as a brilliant strategist. And this whole story kicks off with a fundamental question that pretty much every leader has to face at some point. This right here, this is the central problem Paul was staring down. You know, it's a challenge that anyone trying to bridge 2 different worlds can totally get. He had to figure out how to open a door for his message without accidentally compromising the very foundation of that message. The way he solves this, it's just a brilliant piece of strategic thinking. So let's set the stage. So picture this. Paul is on his second huge missionary journey. And where's the first place he goes? Right back to cities like Lystra and Derbe. Now, you got to remember, these are the exact places where on his first trip, he faced intense, life-threatening persecution. I mean, we're talking about being stoned and literally left for dead. Just the fact that he's going back shows you the incredible courage and commitment we're dealing with here. But see, Paul wasn't just some pioneer, planting flags and then moving on to the next town. His real strategy was all about long-term, sustainable growth. He's coming back to nurture these brand new churches, to strengthen them, to make sure they have the deep roots they need to actually survive and thrive. And it's right there in Lystra that Paul's whole plan takes this pivotal turn. He's not just there to check in on people. He's actively scouting for talent. He's looking for that next generation of leaders. And he finds this incredibly promising young disciple who, it turns out, is perfectly positioned to help the mission just explode. And he finds the perfect guy, a young man named Timothy. Just look at this resume, right? His mother is a Jewish believer, but his father is Greek. He's got this deep, authentic faith thanks to his mom and his grandmother. And what's really crucial here, he has an outstanding reputation among all the local churches. Paul immediately sees the potential. Timothy isn't just a good kid, he is the perfect human bridge between the Jewish and the Gentile worlds. So the potential is off the charts. But there's a problem. A pretty significant cultural roadblock that's tied directly to Timothy's mixed heritage, and it could stop their work before it even gets started. So what does a master strategist like Paul do? How does he play this really delicate situation? Well, Paul makes a decision that, on the surface, seems completely contradictory. He decides to have Timothy circumcised. Now hang on a second. This is happening right after the big Jerusalem Council had officially declared that Gentile believers did not need to be circumcised to be saved. So what in the world is going on here? Is Paul caving? Is he compromising? To understand this move, we have to be absolutely crystal clear about something. This decision was never about salvation. It wasn't a theological compromise. Paul was not, for a second, saying Timothy needed this to be saved. No. Instead, it was a purely strategic move, a pastoral decision. Think of it like a key, specifically designed to open a door that would have otherwise been slammed shut in their faces. And here's the very practical reason why. Paul's method was always the same. Go to the Jewish synagogue first. An uncircumcised man with a Jewish mother, like Timothy, would have been a massive offense. It would have been a barrier to even getting in the door, let alone getting a hearing. By removing this cultural stumbling block, Paul was simply clearing the runway for the mission to take off. And this wasn't some random, one-off decision he made on the fly. This was part of Paul's core philosophy. As he wrote himself, he was willing to adapt his approach, to meet people where they were. Not to change the message, ever, but to make sure the message could actually be heard in the first place. Okay, but removing that cultural barrier, that was only half of the playbook. At the exact same time Paul was making this strategic concession, he was also doubling down on reinforcing a rock-solid doctrinal foundation. As they traveled from town to town, Paul and his team delivered what were called the dogmata. These were the official authoritative decrees from the Jerusalem Council. They were actively teaching that salvation is by grace, through faith, not by works, like circumcision. So you see this brilliant 2-part strategy. Remove a cultural barrier for access, while at the same time delivering doctrinal truth for freedom. So, the big question is, did it work? did this complex, nuanced strategy actually pay off? Well, the answer from the text is a resounding yes. We get this clear cause and effect relationship, showing the powerful results that came directly from these two key decisions. So you have these two pillars working in perfect harmony. On one hand, you've got the strategic move with Timothy, wisely taking a barrier off the table. On the other, you have the absolute doctrinal clarity of the Jerusalem decrees. And together, they created the perfect environment for explosive growth. And the result was what we'd call holistic growth. The churches were strengthened in the faith, that's deep qualitative growth, and they increased in number daily, that's wide quantitative growth. They grew healthier, and they grew bigger. That's the sign of a truly effective mission. Look, this isn't just some ancient story. It's a timeless case study in what great leadership looks like. So, what can we pull from Paul's playbook and actually apply in our own lives and our own contexts today? Here's a simple 4-step framework based on what we just saw. First, identify the gifts around you. Look for the Timothys, people with high potential and great character. Second, be smart about cultural sensitivities. Ask yourself, what unnecessary barriers can I remove to open doors for people? Third, never ever compromise on your core truths. Anchor everything you do in clear, sound doctrine. And finally, track your progress. Celebrate both the deep qualitative health and the wide quantitative growth. And that really brings us to our final thought. Paul's entire strategy here began by identifying and investing in one person. So the question for all of us is, who is the Timothy in your world? Who can you mentor? Who can you invest in? And what cultural bridge in your home, your workplace, your community are you being called to build for the sake of a greater mission? Thanks for joining this explainer.